Let's learn some of the best AWS Cost Explorer strategies. I'm Chris, Cloud Architect and founder of systemsarchitect.io and codeguides.io. Subscribe to the channel and like this video. Cloud bills have a way of creeping up quietly until a finance meeting turns into an uncomfortable surprise. And the difference between teams that stay ahead of that curve and teams that don't usually comes down to how well they use the tools already sitting in their AWS console. AWS Cost Explorer is one of the most underused of those tools. It turns a vague sense that spend is up into a precise, actionable picture of exactly where every dollar is going. This video walks through 15 strategies for getting real value out of Cost Explorer. They range from granular anomaly detection to organization-wide reporting cadences. 1. Enable hourly and resource level granularity. 2. Create a custom cost allocation tagging strategy. 3. Leverage cost categories for organizational mapping. 4. Establish baseline reports with saved filters. 5. Implement forecasting for budget planning. 6. Analyze costs by linked account in AWS organizations. 7. Monitor reserved instance and savings plans utilization. 8. Group costs by service and API operation. 9. Compare costs across time periods. 10. Filter by purchase option to optimize pricing models. 11. Integrate Cost Explorer with AWS budgets. 12. Analyze amortized versus unblended costs. 13. Export Cost Explorer data for advanced analysis. 14. Monitor data transfer and regional costs. 15. Establish regular cost review cadences. 1. Enable hourly and resource level granularity. Cost Explorer's default view groups spending by day, which is fine for a slow trend, but far too coarse to catch a cost spike while it's still small. Why does that matter? Switching to hourly, resource level views lets you trace an anomaly back to the specific resource. That's the EC2 instance, Lambda function, or database. It takes minutes instead of days. 2. Create a custom cost allocation tagging strategy. Cost Explorer can only slice spending by business unit, project, or environment if the underlying resources are tagged consistently. So a tagging strategy is really the foundation everything else in this list depends on. Activating cost allocation tags in the billing console turns a flat bill into something attributable. You can trace it to a team, a customer, or a product line. A good strategy enforces a small, mandatory set of keys instead of hoping teams remember. 3. Leverage cost categories for organizational mapping. Tags work well when resources are consistently labeled, but real organizations often have accounts, legacy resources, or third-party costs that don't fit neatly into a tagging scheme, and that's where cost categories come in. Cost categories let you define rule-based groupings that map spending to your actual org chart. They combine tags, accounts, services, and charge types into a single custom dimension that mirrors how the business actually thinks about cost. 4. Establish baseline reports with saved filters. Every time someone rebuilds the same filter combination from scratch, that's time not spent analyzing the results, and it's also an opportunity for the numbers to drift depending on who configured the report. Saving a frequently used combination of filters as a custom report helps. The finance team, the platform team, and engineering leadership all end up looking through the same lens, month after month. 5. Implement forecasting for budget planning. Cost Explorer's forecasting feature projects future spend based on historical usage patterns, and treating that projection as a planning input rather than an afterthought changes how budget conversations go. A team that checks forecasts regularly can flag a likely overrun weeks in advance. Comparing forecast accuracy over time helps catch a changing usage pattern before it becomes a surprise. We have a lot more about this on systemsarchitect.io. See the full section there. Also, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more and check the video notes for links. 6. Analyze costs by linked account in AWS organizations. Once an organization runs multiple linked accounts, the consolidated bill on its own tells you very little. It doesn't say which team or workload is actually driving spend. Segmenting Cost Explorer analysis by linked account restores that visibility. It also surfaces sharing opportunities for commitment-based discounts across accounts with complementary usage patterns. 7. Monitor reserved instance and savings plans utilization. Reserved instances and savings plans only pay off if the commitment you bought actually gets used. Cost Explorer's dedicated utilization and coverage views are the way to check that in practice. What does low utilization tell you? A low utilization number signals wasted spend. Low coverage points to additional savings still on the table. Checking both regularly lets you right-size the next commitment instead of guessing. 8. Group costs by service and API operation. A service-level cost breakdown might tell you DynamoDB is expensive this month. It won't tell you why. That's where drilling down to the API operation level earns its keep. Grouping spend by service and API call reveals what's really driving the cost. It could be red-heavy queries, excessive writes, or high data transfer. That turns a vague finding into something addressable. 9. Compare costs across time periods. Looking at a single month of spending in isolation misses the story. Why compare across time periods? That story only shows up over time. That's why Cost Explorer's comparison features deserve a regular place in any cost review. Comparing month over month, quarter over quarter, and year over year makes it much easier. You can tell expected seasonal variation from a genuine anomaly that needs investigation. 10. Filter by purchase option to optimize pricing models. 10. AWS offers several distinct purchase options: on-demand, reserved instances, spot instances, and savings plans. Understanding the actual mix your organization is using matters. A workload sitting almost entirely on on-demand pricing usually has low-hanging savings available. Naturally interruptible workloads are strong candidates for spot instances instead. 11. Integrate Cost Explorer with AWS budgets. Cost Explorer is fundamentally an analysis and reporting tool, while AWS Budgets is the tool that actually alerts you when spending crosses a threshold, and the two work best when they're built on the same view of the data. Using a saved Cost Explorer report as the basis for a budgets alert grounds the threshold in real spend. It's not just a number picked out of thin air. 12. Analyze amortized versus unblended costs. Cost Explorer offers two different ways of looking at the same spend. Picking the right one for the question you're asking avoids some genuinely confusing conversations. Unblended costs show the actual build charges finance needs for cash flow. Amortized costs spread commitment fees evenly across usage instead. That gives engineering teams a true unit cost for evaluating efficiency. 13. Export Cost Explorer data for advanced analysis. Cost Explorer's built-in visualizations cover a lot of ground, but they have limits. That's especially true when you need to correlate AWS spend with data that lives outside AWS entirely. Think revenue figures or non-cloud vendor costs. Regularly exporting reports as CSV files opens the door to custom analysis. So does using the more detailed AWS cost and usage reports. It also gets around Cost Explorer's own data retention limits. 14. Monitor data transfer and regional costs. Data transfer charges have a reputation for hiding in plain sight. They quietly accumulate across cross-region transfers and internet egress. They add up between availability zones too, even within the same region. Cost Explorer can filter by data transfer type and by AWS region. That's the most direct way to bring these often overlooked charges into view. It matters especially for multi-region architectures. 15. Establish regular cost review cadences. None of the previous strategies deliver lasting value if they're only used once. That's why a recurring review cadence matters. Bring both engineering and finance stakeholders into it. That matters as much as any single technique on this list. A practical rhythm pairs weekly, tactical check-ins with a monthly review. The monthly review covers longer-term trends. What actually changes the culture? Over time, this cadence turns cost optimization into a routine practice. To sum up, getting the most out of AWS Cost Explorer takes the right technical configuration. It also takes consistent tagging. Pair that with the right analytical habits like forecasting and time comparisons. Wrap it all in a recurring review cadence. Then the whole organization looks at the same numbers. None of these 15 strategies require new tooling or additional spend to implement. They're about using a service AWS already provides more deliberately. Start with whichever gap feels most immediate. Build outward from there. Thanks for checking out this video, and like the video and subscribe to this channel. Find a lot more articles and guides on both systemsarchitect.io and codeguides.io. Again, that's systemsarchitect.io and codeguides.io.